Is your HOA always this fair? The gate creaked as Linda snapped photos of my brother's truck like a crime scene. The paper slap of her violation notice landing on my driveway before sunrise. She tried to tow us first and explain later until the permit file we dug up stamped with a forgotten state memo dropped like a gavel and made the porch light flick across her face. Next week, that same HOA clubhouse stayed dark and silent, its rules suddenly meaningless. Her tow truck's yellow lights were already flashing under my brother's truck when I stepped out. For a second, I thought I'd misread the scene. The coffee in my hand, the cold air biting my cheeks, the sun not even past the roofs. Yet it all felt too early for chaos. But there it was, the flatbed at an angle in our cul-de-sac winch humming low cables already snug under Sam's rear axle. The tow operator, a big guy in a faded hoodie with Miller's Recovery stitched over the chest, was crouched by the back wheel, feeding the hook through. The amber strobes washed everything in a sickly yellow pulse. And off to the side, of course, stood Linda Macy. Neat navy blazer. HOA badge clipped to the lapel like it made her a deputy. Clipboard in hand. Reading glasses perched halfway down her nose as she scribbled on a form with slow, deliberate strokes. Over her shoulder, the sign at the mouth of the cul-de-sac watched all of it like a smug witness, Maple Ridge HOA. Parking rules. No commercial vehicles overnight. No street parking, 11 p.m., 6 a.m. The white paint on the letters was still bright. We'd had a meeting about that sign last fall. Linda called it a necessary reinforcement of standards. Most of us called it overkill. I set my coffee on the hood of my pickup and walked toward the mesh shoes crunching on damp asphalt. The air smelled like wet grass and cold metal. From my open garage, the local AM station murmured about the weather, tinny and calm like nothing was happening. Miller Linda said, not even looking up. "You heard me. Hook it." "It is hooked," Miller grunted, tightening a ratchet. "Just lifting slow." "Good," she replied. "Document that it was in violation at 7:05. Minnie, Cliff 1. 7:05 and you're already ruining my day," I said. Linda's head snapped up. Her eyes did a quick sweep my t-shirt, my old work jeans, the coffee ring already forming on my hood, then settled on my face. "Good morning, Jack," she said. "This doesn't have to be unpleasant." "Then unhook my brother's truck," I said. She raised one eyebrow. "Your brother's commercial vehicle, which is against our covenants." "It just arrived," I said. "He pulled in around 6. It's 7:05. That sign says no parking overnight and no street parking between 11 and 6. It is neither of those things." She tapped the clipboard with her pen. "It's a commercial truck. Rule 3C, no commercial vehicles in driveways or street period." I looked at the truck. Sam's F-250 white logo on the door for his construction company. Ladder rack, toolboxes, not a thing wrong with it except being in Linda's line of sight. "It's in my driveway," I said. "Not the street." "The rule doesn't care," she said. "It's a visual standard." "Since when?" I asked. "Because that sign out there only mentions overnight and hours. That sign," she said, "is a summary. The full bylaws were provided when you closed Jack. This is just enforcement. Nothing personal." "Funny," I said. "Feels personal." I pulled my phone from my pocket and without breaking eye contact raised it toward the sign at the end of the cul-de-sac. The camera app chimed softly when it focused. Click. Silent beat logged. I zoomed in enough to catch every word on the HOA board. "Taking pictures won't change the rules," Linda said. "No," I agreed, "but it'll help when someone asks what they actually say." Minnie, Cliff 2. Miller cleared his throat. Ma'am." He straightened up, grease on his gloves, the hook snug under Sam's truck. "I still don't have a ticket. Or a police call. Just your, He glanced at her clipboard. "Verbal." "Your tow authorization is attached," she said, flipping a page and tearing off a pink carbon copy. She thrust it toward him without looking at me. "Maple Ridge, HOA. See signatory." He took it and squinted. "This says internal enforcement order. No plate number. No lot number. That's what you're looking at," she said, pointing with her pen at the truck. "Gray F-250. Commercial. Non-compliant. I stepped closer between them and the front bumper. Miller shifted clearly, not wanting to be in the middle. "Linda, what exactly is my brother's offense?" I asked. "Existing in a zip code you don't approve of." "He's not the issue," she said. "The vehicle is. And as I told you at the last meeting, our streets aren't a construction yard." "He's here for 3 days," I said, "helping me with the roof. He's parking in my driveway beside my garage in a cul-de-sac that barely gets traffic. Our covenants don't say unless he's helping Jack with a project," she said. "They say no commercial vehicles. Period. Otherwise, we end up with box trucks, trailers, dump trucks." "You mean we end up with people working?" I cut in. Her gaze sharpened. "We end up with blight." That word hung there heavier than it had any right to be. Miller shifted his weight again. "Look, folks, I just go where they tell me. But usually there's like a ticket. Something stuck under the wiper. Some kind of my word," Linda said, turning on him, "is the ticket." Micro-climax. Miller's mouth closed. He looked down at the toe slip in his hand, then up at me, then back to Linda. The yellow strobe reflected off his safety glasses, making his eyes look washed out and tired. "Ma'am, I really don't want to drag somebody's truck if this isn't squared away," he said. "I get yelled at enough as it is." She stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to sharpen it. "The board has already documented this vehicle," she said. "We have photographs, timestamps. You were called at 6:58. The longer you stand here, the more our residents have to look at this eyesore. An eyesore, I said. It's cleaner than half the SUVs on this block." "Jack," she said, finally facing me again, "you're making this more difficult than it needs to be." "No," I said. "You are. You skipped notices and jumped straight to a tow at 7:05 because you saw a logo on a door and smelled blood." Her nostrils flared. "You received notices when we updated the parking rules. I received a 12-page email in 6-point font that mentioned visual uniformity once and never said, 'We will tow any truck we don't like before you've finished your first cup of coffee.'" The radio in my garage switched to a traffic update, the announcer's voice distant and cheery. A dog barked somewhere up the hill. A neighbor's blinds twitched. Miller glanced at the houses, then at me. "Look, if you want to contest, you can call the number on my card later, but right now, I've got a job." I raised my phone and pointed it at him, then at Linda, then down at the tow rig under Sam's axle. "This is my job," I said. "Documenting whatever this is." He swallowed. "I don't like being on camera, man." "Then unhook the truck," I said quietly. "Because if it leaves my driveway on her say-so alone, this video is going straight to my lawyer." Linda snorted. "Lawyer. For a parking enforcement. That'll go over well." "Stranger things have cost people their jobs," I said. Mini Cliff 3. Behind us, there was a rustle of canvas and metal. A toolbox lid clanged softly. Then another sound, a scrape of boots in the truck bed. Miller frowned and leaned to the side, peering past me toward the back. He said slowly. "Was somebody back there this whole time?" Linda turned annoyed, pen already poised for another note. My little brother Sam unfolded himself from the bed of his own truck like he'd just finished a nap, phone held up camera, pointed squarely at Linda. The red recording light was already on. "Well," he said, voice rough with sleep, but amused. "This ought to be good." Linda snapped a photo of my brother's truck like she was tagging evidence. She held the phone low, but angled just right, thumb tapping the screen in a neat little rhythm, front plate side logo, rear bumper. Each click landed like a rubber stamp. Sam stayed on the truck bed, sitting with one knee up his own phone, trained on her. "Smile if you want," he said mildly. "Video picks it up either way." "I do not consent to being recorded," Linda snapped. "You stepped onto my driveway in order to tow on my vehicle," Sam replied. "I don't think my consent is the one in question." Miller shifted near the winch, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. The yellow strobe kept washing his face in pulses of tired gold. A door opened across the cul-de-sac. Mr. Davis, a retired electrician who always wore the same Broncos hoodie, stepped out onto his porch, coffee mug in hand, looking down at the commotion. "What's going on, Jack?" he called. "Apparently I said Sam's truck is a mortal threat to property values." Commercial vehicles are prohibited overnight, Linda said loud enough for everyone within 50 feet. It's in the bylaws. Section 3, paragraph C. Sam slid off the bed and landed lightly on the pavement. Up close, he looked even more awake than I'd realized, eyes sharp, scanning the scene, taking mental snapshots to match the video. It didn't spend the night here, I said. He got in 10 minutes ago. You know that. You were walking your dog when he pulled up. That doesn't matter, Linda insisted. The covenants don't distinguish. It's commercial. It's prohibited. It's my personal truck, Sam said. Paid for with my personal money, insured personally. I just happen to use it when I work. You operate a business out of it, she countered. That makes it... What it makes it, he cut in, is a vehicle, parked in my brother's driveway, at 7:05 in the morning. If you're going to escalate this, at least pretend you've read your own fine print. Minnie Cliff 1. She bristled. Excuse me. Sam hopped down and walked past her toward the little HOA bulletin board mounted next to the mailboxes. It was one of Linda's favorite projects. Brown cork glass cover, brass latch. Flyers for the summer barbecue, the pool rules, and a laminated sheet labeled Maple Ridge, HOA. Bylaws summary. He flipped the latch with 2 fingers. The glass door creaked. Papers rustled as he turned the pages. What are you doing? Linda demanded, heels ticking on the pavement as she followed. Reading what you claim to be enforcing, he said. Novel concept, I know. I moved to stand near Miller in the truck. My phone stayed up recording. Mr. Davis edged closer down his driveway. 2 houses over, someone raised a blind and stayed there silhouetted. Sam traced a line down the bylaw summary with 1 finger. Here, he said, tow protocol. He read out loud, clear and steady. Tow protocol requires notice per county code Part 1207. He turned, holding the page halfway up so the early light caught the print. Where's the notice, Linda? Her jaw tightened. This is the notice. No, he said. That's a clipboard. Where's the written time-stamped notice per Part 1207? The thing the county says you have to issue before you go grabbing cars. Vehicles, she corrected. And we're within our rights. He let the page go. It flapped once, then settled back against the cork with a soft rustle. Cool Sam said. So you won't mind when we pull the actual county code and see how many steps you skipped? Minnie Cliff 2. Linda's eyes flicked toward me, then to the houses measuring the witnesses. Her voice dropped half a notch. This is internal enforcement, she said. The county doesn't need to be involved. You're using a private tow company on a public street that dead ends into my property, I said. You already involved more than yourself. Our streets are privately maintained, she shot back. Cool, Sam said again. Then you definitely know Part 1207 applies to private enforcement on private roads open to public use. It's almost like you skimmed the bold headings and skipped the boring parts. Miller scratched his jaw through his beard. Is that true? He asked Linda quietly. About the notice thing? She turned on him, eyes flashing. You were contracted, she said. You're being paid to do a job, not debate statutes. I'm being paid not to get sued, he muttered. Sam took 2 steps back toward his truck and popped the side box. The latch clicked and the lid rose on squeaky gas struts. Inside, instead of just tools and random hardware, there were neat plastic cases, each labeled with a label maker. One of them he opened with a flick of his thumb. The inside looked like a mobile evidence bin, calipers, a tape measure, a handheld scanner, a gimbal camera nestled in foam. Mr. Davis whistled under his breath. That's not a handyman setup. Linda swallowed. What exactly do you do, Mr. Mercer? Sam smiled without warmth. Today, I'm reading your bylaws out loud in my work boots. That's all you need to know. Microclimax. He lifted the small gimbal camera out of its case, pressed a button, and the lens flicked to life, stabilizing with a tiny mechanical whir. It locked onto Linda like it had an opinion. You're already on my phone, he said. This just makes the footage steadier. Linda took a half step back, then seemed to remember she was supposed to be in charge. This conversation is over, she said. You're both being unreasonable. Reasonable is you sliding a notice under my door with a date on it, I said. Not lying in wait with a tow truck at sunrise. She looked past us toward the entrance of the subdivision. Her lips pressed into a line. "Fine," she said. She pulled her own phone out, swiped twice, and lifted it to her ear. "Macy," she said when someone picked up. "Yes." "I'm at lot 23. "Yes, the commercial truck is still here. No, they're refusing compliance." There was a pause. Her eyes never left Sam. "Then, I'm requesting an additional truck under official order," she said, enunciating each word like a verdict. "If they want paperwork so badly, we'll give them all of it." Minnie Cliff. Chapter Cliff. Sam's camera was still locked on her. His eyebrow ticked up just a fraction. "Official order," he repeated quietly. "Now we're getting somewhere." The microfilm reader hummed under the cold fluorescent lights when the clerk looked up and said, "Morning, Helen. Reader 3's free, you'll want that one. The others chew film." I hadn't even shut the door yet. The county recorder's office always felt half museum, half basement, rows of metal shelves, plat books stacked like bricks, the air dry with paper dust. Helen walked in as if she owned the place. "Clay," she murmured, "today. We prove your farm isn't just old, it's documented old." I followed her past a sign that read, "Records Room B," my boots thudding softly on the floor. She already had a box of labeled microfilm reels waiting. Mark the clerk had set them aside. "Here," he said, sliding the box toward us. "Northridge surveys 1925 to 1940, and the subdivision packet from 87. It's all in there." Helen nodded. "You're a lifesaver." "County employee," he corrected. "We just file miracles." Minnie Cliff 1202. Helen picked up a reel labeled 1930, Northridge Agricultural Survey, and handed it to me. "Load it," she said. "Slow. These things are older than both of us." The machine clicked as the film slid in. The screen glowed, then sharpened into neat grids, sector numbers, property boundaries, faded, handwritten notes. "Back up a hair," Helen said. "There. Zoom." The letters grew larger. "Mercer Farm, Category B Heritage Asset." I blinked. "That's us." "Not just that," she whispered. "Category B means recognized significance. Someone flagged your farm 95 years ago." My throat tightened. "So this wasn't some folklore Grandpa made up?" "Nope," she said. "This is the county saying, this land matters. And once a government writes history down, it stays written." We scanned the frame, printed a copy. The old ink looked almost ceremonial on paper prop number 2, undeniably real. Helen wasn't done. "Next, the 1987 packet," she said, pulling out an accordion file marked Long Mesa Ridge Subdivision Approval Documents. Inside were memos, stamped notices, typed letters on fading county letterhead. She sifted until her hand froze. "Found it," she said. A page stamped filed, 06/12/1987, showed a planning officer's note. "Subdivision borders agricultural parcel, Mercer Farm Category B Heritage Asset. Development must respect existing structures and viewshed. Farm retains prior historical standing. HOA architectural controls do not apply without owner consent." I read it slowly, twice. "Not subject," I repeated. They literally wrote, "We don't fall under their design controls." Meaning Helen said your farmhouse paint color fencing outbuildings, none of it is theirs to dictate. Ever. Then why is Valerie acting like my barn personally offended her because she's banking on you not knowing any of this? Helen tapped the file. "And now you do." Minnie Cliff 2/452. We copied the memo, slid everything into a fresh folder. Helen labeled the tab Mercer Farm Heritage, Evidence State Eligible. Her marker squeaked on the paper, an oddly satisfying sound. "You keep saying eligible," I said. "How big of a deal is that?" "Really?" Helen sat back against the table. "Eligible means the state already has you on their radar. They just never got the prompt to finish the designation. County acknowledges you. Subdivision acknowledges you. That's 2 layers. The state's the 3rd. And the HOA. "Doesn't even rank," she said. They can complain about weeds. They cannot rewrite 1930 history. I exhaled, a knot loosening in my chest. For the first time since Valerie's letter, the anger didn't just simmer, it had direction. Helen packed the documents carefully. Clay, this isn't just paperwork. This is leverage. We stepped out into the afternoon sun. The parking lot was half-empty White County trucks, faded sedans. My old Ford sat right where I left it. But something new glared back at me. A red sticker slapped onto the corner of my windshield, Maple Ridge HOA non-compliant view. I walked closer. The adhesive was still fresh. Too fresh. Helen stopped beside me. They followed you here. Or they checked the county website and panicked, I said. Clay, she murmured, this is harassment. They know you're digging. I peeled the sticker slowly. The glue pulled like stubborn gum. Well, I said, folding it once, then again. They're not going to like what we dug up today. The certified envelope was heavier than it had any right to be. It sat on top of the stack of seed catalogs and hardware flyers on my kitchen table, green return receipt tag stapled to the corner, my name typed in all caps. The return address line carried the same little oak leaf logo I was starting to hate, Maple Ridge Homeowners Association. I turned it over once, then carried it into the small room off the hall that Helen jokingly called my command center. It was just a home office old desk humming printer, a scanner that complained every time it woke up, but the farmhouse ledger on the shelf and the county documents we'd pulled yesterday made it feel like something more. I sat, slit the top with a letter opener, and slid the papers out. Second notice of violation. Below it, in bold, offensive, historic signage and non-compliant visual theme. A little farther down, you are hereby ordered to remove all historic signage depicting dates, names, and imagery that detract from the unified visual character of Maple Ridge. Continued refusal will initiate lien proceedings. I read it again slower. Offensive historic signage. The window over my desk framed the gate and the cedar sign just beyond it. Mercer Farm, Estin, 1923. Caught the morning light like it had done most of my life. My phone lit up next to the keyboard. Helen's name flashed. You opened it, she said. No greeting. Yeah, I answered. You already know what's in it. I saw the copy they filed with the county, she said. Email attachment. They actually used the phrase offensive historic signage. Word for word, I said. Apparently, the year my grandfather carved into that board is hurting feelings. There was a pause, then a sharp exhale. Clay, this level of acknowledgement requires state review. What do you mean? I mean, she said, the moment they put in writing that they're targeting you because of your history. Literally your history that stops being just an eyesore argument. That starts bumping up against heritage and preservation law. County can only go so far. This needs new eyes. I looked around the room. The 1930 survey copy we'd printed yesterday lay in a neat stack. The 1987 memo, the one stamped filed with that note about prior historical standing, sat in a clear sleeve. I'd left them on the desk because, if I was being honest, I liked seeing them there. So, what's the next step, I asked. You let me make a call, she said. I used to work with a guy at the State Heritage Commission. Field officer. He owes me a favor. That an actual favor, I said, or the drinks at a conference in 2009 kind? He owes me a favor, she repeated. Trust me. The line went quiet a moment as she tapped something on her end. Email me scans of everything, she added. The 1930 map, the 1987 memo, both violation notices. I'll package it and ping him. I stood and started feeding pages into the scanner. It whined, then began its slow mechanical crawl. Light strobed under the glass. You really think the state cares about one farm outside Golden? I asked. They care about precedent, Helen said. If an HOA can bully a designated heritage asset into wiping its own history off the map without anyone saying a word, that's a bad one. The scanner beeped done. I dragged the PDFs into a folder, labeled it Mercer Heritage Docs, and fired them off. File sent, I said. Good. Sit tight, she replied. If he calls you before he calls me, answer. She hung up. I left the violation on the desk, propped so the phrase offensive historic signage stared back at me, and turned to the computer. The state website's search bar waited bland and bureaucratic. I typed State Heritage Commission Colorado and clicked through until I found a section labeled Rural Heritage Assets Preliminary Protection Requests. There, in small patient font, were the words, Declaration Request, State Heritage Zone Preliminary. My phone buzzed on the desk. Voicemail alert. I checked the missed call, an unfamiliar number out of Denver, and hit play. Mr. Mercer, this is Helen's friend Dan Reynolds with the State Heritage Commission, a man's voice said. I've just reviewed the summary she sent over. That 1930 survey and the 87 filing are interesting. Call me back when you can. His tone was calm, but there was curiosity under it. The good kind. I called. He picked up on the second ring. Clay, he said. You sitting on a farm they tried to erase. Seems that way, I answered. Here's my quick take, he said. Category B in a 1930 county survey plus a subdivision approval that explicitly carves you out, that qualifies you for at least a preliminary state heritage assessment. Bring hard copies of both and any photos that show continuity, same structures, same sign, that sort of thing. Where do I bring them, I asked. You don't, he said. Not yet. Use the online portal. There's a form, Declaration Request State Heritage Zone Preliminary. Upload your documents there. Once it's in the system, it's in my queue with a date stamp. That matters. He paused. And Clay, he added, once we open that review, anybody trying to pressure you into changing the property's historic features is going to have a very bad day if they keep going. When the call ended, I sat for a second listening to the faint hum of the computer fan and the tick of the old wall clock. Then I pulled a binder from the shelf, the kind I usually reserved for tax records and seed orders, and started filling it. 1930 survey on top plastic sleeve. The 1987 filed memo behind it. Copies of the 2 violation notices clipped together. I walked outside, took fresh photos gate sign, barn, the ridge beyond, then came back in and dropped the SD card into the slot. On the state website, I opened the form Reynolds mentioned. Declaration Request, State Heritage Zone Preliminary. It asked for parcel ID, legal description history supporting documents. My fingers found a rhythm on the keys. Family-owned agricultural parcel since 1923. I typed. Designated Category B Heritage Asset in 1930. County Survey. Subdivision approved in 1987 with explicit acknowledgement of prior historical standing and carve-out from HOA controls. Current HOA attempting to compel removal of historic signage on basis of aesthetics. I attached the files. The progress bar crawled, then flashed Upload Complete. My cursor hovered over the Submit button for half a heartbeat. Somewhere out of the window the wind moved through the pasture grass, bending it in slow waves. Paperwork, not power. Helen had told me. I clicked Submit. The screen refreshed with a confirmation number and a timestamp. A small line of text at the bottom read, "A State Heritage Field Officer will contact you regarding an on-site assessment if warranted." I was still staring at it when my phone buzzed again on the desk. Unknown Denver number. I answered. This is Clay, Mr. Mercer, the voice said. This is Officer Reynolds with the State Heritage Commission. I see your application just hit the system. He paused, then added, We're coming out tomorrow. The white state-issued SUV rolled up my gravel drive just after 9. Sunlight flashing off the emblem on the door, Colorado State Heritage Commission. 2 more trucks followed survey equipment strapped in the bed's orange cases stacked neatly. Across the road, Valerie and 3 HOA board members were already clustered by the mailbox's arms crossed, expressions sharp enough to cut wire. Officer Reynolds stepped out first. Tan field jacket clipboard. Calm eyes that scanned the property the way a doctor sizes up a patient before saying a word. He offered his hand. "Morning, Mr. Mercer." "Clay," I said, shaking it. "Thanks for coming." He gestured toward the barn, the ridge, the cedar sign by the gate. If your documents hold this farm is far beyond HOA reach. Valerie snapped. We weren't consulted about this visit. You don't have jurisdiction, Reynolds replied without turning. Please remain outside the perimeter while we work. She sputtered, but the survey team was already unloading a timber corer and a handheld scanner. Helen's sedan appeared next, dust kicking up behind it. She climbed out, holding a binder thick enough to use as a wheel chock. Morning, she said, handing it to Reynolds. He flipped it open, nodding. Good, we'll verify each item on site. We started at the cedar sign. The sun caught the carved date 1923, and Reynolds brushed a thumb across the grain. Same profile as the 1950 photo you submitted, he said. Hand tools, not router. He waved to a tech. Authenticate it. A small scanner beeped as it harvested measurements. The tech scribbled something, murmuring, Weathering pattern matches. Valerie called out from the road. That sign violates visual uniformity. Reynolds held up a hand. Ma'am, final warning. We walked toward the barn. The old boards creaked, cool air spilling out the moment I slid the door open. Original timber, he asked. Most of it, I said. Granddad kept everything. The corer slid into one of the beams, pulling out a narrow cylinder of wood. The tech counted the rings, eyes widening. Predates, 1930 survey, he said. Reynolds nodded slowly. Good. They measured the foundation next stone depth corner alignment. The team compared points on a tablet to a scanned copy of the 1930 survey map Helen had restored the night before. One tech traced a line with her finger. Stone placement matches this annotation, she said. Right down to the angle. Valerie stormed a few feet closer. You can't just accept their word. There are covenants. There are community standards. Reynolds turned voice even. You are interrupting a state inspection. Step back. One of the board members tugged her sleeve, but she yanked away, glaring at the barn like it had insulted her personally. Helen leaned toward me. Keep steady. This part matters. We moved to the back acre where 2 survey stones still sat half buried under tall grass. Reynolds knelt, brushing soil aside. This one, he said, matches the grid reference on the 30 map exactly. The tech checked GPS coordinates, comparing them to the old plat overlay. She let out a quiet breath. It matches, she said. Everything matches. This is the real deal. For a moment, the only sound was the wind shifting across the pasture. Even Valerie stopped mid-rant. Reynolds rose, brushing off his hands. His expression had changed, less clinical, more certain. Mr. Mercer, he said, based on today's findings, we're escalating this. I felt something tighten in my chest. Escalating how? He glanced toward the ridge, then back at the binder. This farm meets the criteria for formal review. We're forwarding it to the commission hearing. Behind me, Helen exhaled softly, a sound equal parts relief and gravity. Valerie's voice cracked across the drive. You can't do that. This neighborhood has standards. Reynolds didn't even look at her. Clay, he said, prepare your materials. The commission will want everything you showed us today. His phone buzzed. He checked the screen, nodded once, then met my eyes. They move fast on cases like this, he said. You'll be notified within the week. I looked toward the farmhouse, the gate, the old sign catching light like it had been waiting for this moment for decades. Then I looked back at the state vehicle survey rod still planted in the dirt. All right, I said. Let's finish what they started in 1930. Reynolds gave a single approving nod. We will. The microphone popped softly when the clerk tested it, and the sound echoed beneath the seal of the state mounted above the dais. I stood behind the witness table binder at my fingertips, trying to ignore the way the projector hummed just loud enough to feel like it was judging me. The hearing room inside the Capitol Annex was all carved wood brass fixtures and the quiet shuffle of people settling into public seating. Helen sat directly behind me, legal pad poised like she was ready to launch into battle. Officer Reynolds occupied the agency table to my right, tie, straight posture, calm. Across the aisle, Valerie sat in a tightly tailored jacket beside her attorney. Her expression had the brittle shine of someone who'd dressed for victory and suddenly realized she might be at the wrong event. A commissioner leaned toward the clerk and whispered Category B, last one in the region. The clerk murmured back, confirmed. The chairperson tapped her mic. This hearing of the State Heritage Commission is now in session. Matter number, she read the docket number regarding the preliminary declaration request for the property commonly referred to as Mercer Farm. She looked at me. Mr. Mercer, please state your name and purpose for the record. I leaned into the mic. Clay Mercer. I'm here to request formal recognition of my family property as a state-protected heritage zone. And what are you presenting today? I rested my palm on the open binder. Historical documents, photographs, and evidence showing my farm's continuous existence since 1923. A 1930 county survey listing it as a Category B heritage asset. A 1987 subdivision approval memo acknowledging the farm's prior historical standing and exempting it from HOA control. And video evidence showing attempts by the Maple Ridge HOA to suppress or remove that history. The chairperson nodded. Proceed. I slid the first document, a printed copy of the 1930 survey, toward the clerk. It traveled up the line until each commissioner had a copy. This is the agricultural survey conducted by the county 93 years ago, I said. The map clearly identifies my property as Mercer Farm Category B Heritage Asset. One commissioner adjusted her glasses. Category B was rare. Reynolds spoke into his mic. Staff confirms it. This is the last surviving Category B asset in the district. The HOA attorney clicked his pen but said nothing yet. I opened the binder to the next section. This is the subdivision memo filed in 1987. I handed the copy forward. Note the section stating, quote, "Farm retains prior historical standing, not subject to HOA architectural controls without owner consent." A commissioner read the line silently, then aloud, "Not subject." Mr. Mercer, did you ever grant such consent? No, ma'am, neither did my father. The HOA attorney rose slightly. If I may, you will have your opportunity, the chairperson said firmly, but polite. I continued. The HOA began issuing violation notices demanding removal of the historic sign my grandfather carved. They labeled it offensive historic signage. They also attempted to categorize the farm as a visual blight inconsistent with their subdivision. The attorney pressed his button. Madam Chair, the HOA's concern is visual disharmony. We're not disputing the farm's age. We are addressing its incompatibility with the modern aesthetic agreed upon by our residents. The projector lit up with a slide. He presented my cedar sign on one side and a row of Maple Ridge homes on the other. This is the issue, he said. Aesthetic conflict affecting value. Helen leaned to her mic. The phrase in their violation letter wasn't damaged, unsafe, or non-compliant structure. It was offensive historic signage. They objected to the date itself. The chairperson glanced at the stack of papers. We have the notices. Continue, Officer Reynolds. Reynolds opened his folder. Our state inspection found that the barn timbers boundary stone sign and structural layout align with the 1930 survey and mid-century photographic evidence. This property maintains historical integrity as documented, and the video submissions a commissioner asked. With the commission's permission, Reynolds said we will play a brief excerpt. The lights dimmed slightly. On the projector, Valerie appeared on camera at my gate, her voice sharp. This kind of outdated farm clutter doesn't fit the image Maple Ridge is trying to project. Another clip showed the red sticker on my truck windshield. Mark it again, she said off camera. Make it clear. The last clip was from the county parking lot. Her voice unmistakable. We can't have that old farm dragging down the look of the ridge. It needs to blend, or it needs to go. When the projector shut off, the room felt heavier. The striped tie commissioner leaned forward. Counsel, do you dispute the authenticity of these recordings? The attorney hesitated. We dispute their framing. Framing, the commissioner repeated, unimpressed. He turned to me. Mr. Mercer, why bring this to the state rather than pursue a private suit? I took a breath. Because this isn't just about aesthetics or annoyance, I said. This is about preserving what the county already recognized. And because if nobody pushes back when history is targeted, then the next heritage property won't stand a chance. Finally, someone fought back. The chairperson exchanged a look with the commissioners, then folded her hands. For the record, she said the commission finds the Mercer property retains verified historical integrity and predates the subdivision. It is eligible for state heritage protection pending final vote. Something warm and fierce rose in my chest. She lifted the gavel. The final decision will be delivered tomorrow at 10 a.m. The room exhaled as one, and for the first time in months it felt like the ground under my boots had shifted in my favor. By 9:30, the gravel shoulder outside my gate looked like the beginning of a parade. Pickup trucks lined both sides of the road. Neighbors stood shoulder to shoulder, coffee cups steaming in the cold air. A Channel 5 news van rolled in late, its dish antenna rising like it was joining the crowd in staring at the gate. The valley behind me stretched out calm and green, but the people gathered here weren't calm at all. They were waiting. I stood just inside the open gate, hands resting on the top rail. The restored cedar sign hung above me, Mercer Farm Este. 1923. Its grain oiled and gleaming. It felt almost alive again, as if it knew this day mattered. Helen was crouched beside a cardboard box on the ground, peeling back the flaps. When she lifted her eyes toward me, I saw the excitement she was trying to hide. "You ready for this?" she asked. "I'm ready," I said. She tapped the edge of the box with her knuckle. "Good, because this will make history legal." Engines rumbled down the road. Heads turned. Conversations quieted. The white state heritage SUV came into view first, followed by a black sedan with small Colorado flags mounted on the front bumper. Both vehicles slowed as they reached the line of people, then rolled to a stop in front of my gate. Officer Reynolds stepped out of the SUV, straightening his jacket like he did before the inspection. Behind him, the chairperson emerged from the sedan. Two commissioners followed along with a staffer carrying a blue folder sealed with the state emblem. Across the road, Valerie stood with two HOA board members. They were overdressed for a roadside announcement, blazers, polished shoes, but they held their posture like they were afraid of being photographed slouching. Valerie glared at the state vehicles as if she could stop them by staring hard enough. Reynolds approached first. "Morning, Clay." "Morning," I said. The chairperson stepped beside him. "Thank you for allowing the commission to make the announcement on your property," she said. Given the nature of the ruling, it felt appropriate. "Glad you're here," I told her. She turned toward the crowd and the reporters raised their microphones. The breeze shifted, carrying the smell of cut hay from the south pasture. She accepted the blue folder from the staffer and opened it carefully. This morning, she began the State Heritage Commission finalized its review regarding Mercer Farm. Every voice, every footstep, every rustle of clothing faded. After full consideration of testimony evidence and the on-site inspection, she continued, the commission finds that the property known as Mercer Farm meets the statutory requirements for state-level heritage designation. She paused, not dramatically, just allowing the words to settle. Therefore, effective immediately, Mercer Farm is hereby designated a state-protected heritage zone under Colorado Heritage Code. A wave of sound rolled across the road. Applause, low whistles, murmurs of approval. Someone slapped the hood of their truck in celebration. A few neighbors shouted my name. Even the Channel 5 cameraman let out a short breath, surprised. The chairperson lifted her hand gently until the crowd quieted. This designation includes all original structures, historical features, boundary stones, and the farm's historic signage. It supersedes any conflicting homeowners association covenants or architectural limitations. Across the road, Valerie stepped forward sharply. "This is unacceptable," she said. "Our covenants were approved by the county. We have visual uniformity rules. That sign—" "Oh, the ruling stands," the chairperson said simply. "Your association's submissions were included in the review. But you didn't give us a chance to—" Reynolds turned toward her, voice completely calm. "Ma'am, as of this morning, the HOA has no jurisdiction on this property. Not over the sign, not over the structures, not over anything designated as historic." Her jaw clenched. The board members behind her stared at the ground. Reynolds nodded once to Helen. She opened the cardboard box and lifted out a bronze plaque the size of a large book. The sunlight caught the raised letters as she peeled back the protective foam. Reynolds took the plaque and held it toward me. The top bore the embossed state seal. Below it, Mercer, Farm Estine 1923, State Protected Heritage Zone, Colorado, State Heritage Commission. I took it with both hands. The weight surprised me solid and cool, like something meant to last long after all of us were gone. Neighbors cheered again louder this time. The Channel 5 reporter leaned forward to catch the moment. Several people pulled out their phones. I saw two older neighbors wiping their eyes. Someone shouted, "About time." Helen stepped beside me. "Your grandfather would have been proud." "I hope so," I said. The chairperson gave me a small nod. "This plaque belongs at your gate, Mr. Mercer. It marks the state's recognition of your family's history." I turned toward the crowd, the officials, the cameras, the people who had lived long enough in this valley to understand what this meant. I raised the plaque so everyone could see it. Finally, I said, letting the words carry through the morning air, someone fought back. The cheers that followed rolled across the fields, echoing off the ridge like the valley itself was answering. Morning light hit the new bronze plaque before it touched anything else, the kind of light that made metal glow like it was warmed from the inside. It cast a small, sharp reflection across the gatepost, catching the gold lettering as if wanting to read it aloud. Mercer Farm, State Protected Heritage Zone. For the first time in months, the entrance to the farm felt quiet. Not empty quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm finally decides it's finished. I stepped onto the packed dirt just inside the gate and let the morning settle around me. The cedar sign above EST. 1923 looked almost proud, the grain restored to a deep, warm tone. I reached up and ran my fingers along the carved date. Some things survive because they should. A car slowed along the road. Then another, and another. People weren't driving past to check for violations anymore. They were stopping because they wanted to see the plaque. They wanted to see the farm that had survived. Mrs. Langley from 2 houses down walked up with her dog waving like she'd been waiting all morning. "Just wanted to see it in daylight," she said. "Makes the whole ridge look different, doesn't it?" "It does," I said. "You did something big, Clay." She scratched her dog's ear. "Bigger than a farm." Behind her, 2 teenagers from the next block rode by on bikes. One pointed at the sign, then at the plaque as if comparing old and new. The other kid just said, "Dude, that's actually cool," and pedaled off. For teenagers, that counted as a historical commendation. I walked along the fence toward the subdivision entrance. The old HOA notice of Uniform Visual Standards, signs white with navy trim, had been taken down. The posts were still there, bare and slightly crooked, like they didn't know what to do now that they weren't scolding anyone. 2 neighbors from Maple Ridge were standing by one of the empty posts. "They took everything down," one said. "State mandate," the other replied. Apparently, once something is protected at that level, the HOA can't pretend it has aesthetic jurisdiction anymore. "Guess that's what happens," the first neighbor said, "when you pick a fight with a 100-year-old farm." I kept walking. No one stopped me. No one looked away. The tension that had hovered over the ridge all the meetings, the notices, the whispered judgments, felt like it had dried up overnight. When I got back to the gate, Helen was leaning against the fence arms, crossed loosely, hair pulled back like she had been awake long before sunrise. "Busy morning," she said. "You expected this many people? Are you kidding? Half the county was waiting to see if you pulled it off." She nudged the plaque with her knuckle. "Turns out you did." I glanced at the subdivision sign visible through the trees. A temporary banner had been tied across it. In clean green letters it read, "Homes adjacent to a protected heritage zone." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "That's the payoff," Helen said. "The same people who wanted your sign down are now advertising Neighbor to History like it's a feature. Seems ironic." "It is ironic. Gloriously so." She handed me a small wrench. "Speaking of features that plaque isn't going to install itself." We walked to the gatepost together. The screws were already set in place. I held the plaque up against the wood, feeling its weight settle into the right position. Helen steadied it while I tightened the screws one by one. When it was finally mounted, she stepped back and let out a breath. "You didn't just protect a farm, Clay," she said. "You protected the truth." I looked toward Maple Ridge. I thought of every notice, every sticker, every time Valerie tried to tell me that history was inconvenient. Thought about the hearing room in Denver, the commissioner's voice saying the farm predates the subdivision, the official decree landing like a gavel on the whole ridge. "She resigned this morning," Helen added. "HOA president. Effective immediately. Can't say I'm surprised." "No," she said, "but I am satisfied." A group of neighbors approached phones out wanting to take pictures. A few asked if they could stand by the sign. One man shook my hand hard enough to make my shoulder shift. "Glad you stuck with it," he said. "Makes the whole place feel right again." I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. When the crowd finally thinned, I stayed by the gate. The sun had climbed high enough that the plaque glowed bright and steady. The cedar sign shaded it just slightly old and new, sharing the same beam. I reached out and touched the carved lettering again. "History's safe now," I said quietly. And for the first time since the first violation notice landed on my windshield, I knew it was true.